Skill trees are a classic staple of video games. Networks of interconnecting powers and abilities that give players the freedom to create any character their heart desires. No longer limited by the label and restrictions of a class, a player in Skyrim, for example, has the power to tell the game who they are. Their stories are told through the skill trees they branch into and the powers they choose along the way. When done well, a skill tree will allow someone progressing down the path of one speciality to easily skip over to the branch of another. Someone going down the route of a warrior, for example, could easily hop over to a more roguish themed branch of abilities at any point where these two pathways intersect. Perhaps in their shared ability of blade flourishes, for example. In my 15 years of playing Dungeons & Dragons, I have seen a player far too often throw away the concept for a unique character simply because of the fact that they would need to invest 3 or 4 levels into an irrelevant class just so they can acquire one specific ability so as to make their perfect build work. Heck, as perfect a game as Baldur's Gate is, it suffers from the same fate due to its intrinsic connection to D&D. I wanted to make a monk who could unleash a Gatling gun of punches, but could only do that if I diverted 3 of my levels into rogue, just so I could gain a second bonus action. As iconic and memorable as classes in D&D are, I think they have their limitations. And why should we be bound to the identity of our class and the expectations that come with it? Why do I have to be a cleric if I want to heal well? Why can't I be a doctor of a non-magical medicinal practice who can heal their patients perhaps even in better ways than a cleric can, because I have focused my entire leveling journey on those abilities alone? Or perhaps you want to play a character who has no fancy bells or whistles, no magic or sword skill, but instead is just one massive bag of hit points who does nothing more than hold the door. What if I told you all of this was possible? What if I told you I have invented one of the biggest mods for D&D that may have ever been made? A series of skill trees that do away with classes entirely and instead puts the creative control in your hands, allowing you to design any kind of character you could dream of. Imagine it. 3 base skill trees that you progress through simultaneously on your adventuring journey. One focus on combat, another solely devoted to roleplay, and finally a skill tree designed to allow you to hone a craft of your choice. Do you want to be a stealth-focused assassin type who has a heart of gold and is working their ass off to hone their cooking skills just so their companions can have a nice warm meal together after a long adventuring day? Or perhaps you want to be a big buff guardian type who also dabbles in a little magic, studying alchemy so that one day, hopefully, discover a cure for their dying sister's illness. With these skill trees, anything is possible, any character is buildable, and any concept is achievable. And nothing, for you terrified DMs out there, nothing should be too broken. But who am I kidding? Us gamers love to break games and design optimal builds that allow us to do absurd things, and of course, that will be possible. But in your pursuit of power, you might find your character seriously lacking in certain departments, having some major weaknesses in return. But that's the fun part, right? I have been designing skill trees on this channel for quite some time, and I believe they are a superior way to level up your characters, Dungeons & Dragons, and other TTRPGs too, if you can do them right. Leveling needs to feel good, feel personal, and in the end of the day, be intuitive and simple. And the beauty of having a classless skill tree system is their modular potential. All classless D&D games will start with the use of these 3 base skill trees that I've designed: roleplay, combat, and crafting. But let's say you're running a Curse of Strahd campaign and want the whole game to have a darker undertone? Well, why not add my Binding Vows skill tree? Check that out in the description below for more information. But now you have a tangible way for your players to make dark deals with dark beings throughout the campaign. Running a sci-fi game? No problem. Add a sci-fi skill tree to the mix and call mana energy now, and you've got a whole new system. Want a Pokemon adventure? Just chuck in an expanded summon skill tree. The potential is limitless. But without further ado, let's dive into this world of skill trees and explore my unholy creations. In this video, I will be covering my combat-focused classless skill tree. Bit of a mouthful there. So you start your journey here at this center node and make your way outwards from there. Every time you level up, you get a collection of level points, also called LP for short, which is a currency you can spend in this skill tree to open up new nodes and gain access to the abilities they hold. Nodes are these little shapes that are within the skill tree. For example, you can spend 1 level point here in the health node to increase your hit points by a certain amount anytime you purchase from this node. We'll go into more detail on these nodes and what each of them do later in this video, but for now, let's talk about how you begin constructing your character from the ground up. So to begin, you're going to select a race and also assign your ability scores as you normally would when playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I go into more information on this process in the free document I've included below. But once you've done this and you have a little naked character on hand, it's time to set them up with what I describe as a starter pack. This will be your starting equipment, the bare bone essentials, if you will. So when using this classless skill tree, you won't be choosing a background like you typically would in 5th edition. Instead, you will pick 4 of the options from the list here, and you can pick a multiple of the same thing too, if you like. And any gold you earn this way can be spent on any equipment from the player's handbook. So once you've got your basic starter pack, we move on to our next step, which is building a base. For anyone who's seen my first classless skill tree video, which I linked in the description below, this might all seem quite familiar to you. I'll breeze through it very quickly, but if you want more information on how this works, have a read of this section in the included document below, or check out my previous video here, where I discuss it all in more detail. To keep it simple, this step is all about building the foundations of your character. What are their proficiencies, or do they have any skills, feats, or cantrips? You'll have a number of points to spend on anything from this list here before we move on to the final step, which is of course the skill tree itself. But now, DMs out there, before we get into this last step, your players will each have what is essentially a level 0 character. Someone who is still wet behind the ears when it comes to an adventuring life. If you like, you could run a small one-shot now before your players even touch the skill tree and see how they phase against a serious threat. For anyone who's aware of Dungeon Crawl Classics, you might also be aware of their funneling procedure for creating real heroes. Bob Worldbuilder has made an excellent review on this fantastic TTRPG if you want to check it out, and I'll link it below in the description. Or consider checking out Ryan Me DM's video here, where he describes a super adventure where the players play as simple commoners defending a town. But if none of that interests you, and you just want to have a character ready to go right out the gate, then you're going to want to take a look at this fabulous skill tree right here. A network of interconnecting powers and abilities held within each of these little nodes. This skill tree has 3 primary focuses. Physical, represented by the red circular nodes. Technical, represented by the more squarish green nodes found at the bottom left here. And then finally, mystical, represented by the blue 5-sided shapes in the bottom right of the skill tree. In between each of these core branches are what are called dual nodes, which are essentially just a mix of the 2 core branches either side of them. Progressing through this skill tree, despite how complicated it might look, is really quite simple. To start, every time you level up, you gain 5 level points. These can be spent on nodes to unlock their abilities and add them to your character's repertoire. Try to view the skill tree as a series of doorways. When you spend a level point on any of these nodes, you open up that doorway, allowing you to progress to any of the other nodes connecting back to that one. As you can see, the health node, once purchased, branches off into combat focus, adrenaline, and heal. If you spend a level point in the health node for the first time, you will open up these pathways, leading to the nodes connecting back to it. The more nodes you purchase, the more new nodes become available to you. And as you travel further from the center of the skill tree, the more unique and powerful these nodes will become. Also, you can spend level points in one node more than once. Some nodes will tell you if there's a limit to how many times you can purchase from it, but most of the time you can keep purchasing from the same node as many times as you like. Each node usually costs around 1 level point per purchase. You might have also noticed that there are no nodes for spell slots here. Instead, this skill tree uses mana. A much more intuitive system for anyone who plays fantasy video games. For example, mana and stamina are both expendable resources here that allow you to cast spells and perform physical feats respectively. Mana and stamina bars are nothing new to the gaming world, and they really help simplify a lot of the abilities learned from these skill trees. Mana replenishes on a long rest, but can be recovered during short rests using hit dice. And stamina is fully recovered every short rest. Spending level points on the center colorless node gives you access to a selection of different general abilities. For example, you could gain proficiencies in languages, armors, or weapons, or alternatively, you can increase an ability score by 1 or gain a feat at the cost of 4 level points. I love the idea of a player solely focusing in the center node and only occasionally dipping into the health node each time they level up, truly making the most nondescript hero in history. But now that we've covered the basics, let's take a look at some of these nodes and what abilities they have to offer. Starting with adrenaline. This serves as a replacement to the fighter's action surge, allowing you to get an extra action that day. But the more adrenaline you still have in reserve, the greater the damage output will be while you're raging. Adrenaline is a fun, expendable resource that can be utilized more and more as you progress down the physical focus aspects of this skill tree, usually rewarding you for not spending it. Rages are interesting and very customizable with this skill tree. Each purchase of a rage node grants you an additional rage per short rest, but aside from having the advantages of strength-related skill checks and saving throws, it won't do a whole lot else unless you've invested in adrenaline, chosen some rage resistances, or purchased some rage types to really start flavoring the rages you go into. When you purchase a rage resistance, you will, well, become resistant to those damage types while raging. These rage resistance are often purchased in complementary pairs like fire and cold damage, for example. But the more unique damage types like psychic and radiant damage can only be purchased individually. The rage types are really fun. Whenever you go into a rage, you can choose one of the rage types you have purchased and assume that rage. An adamant rage prevents you from being grappled, restrained, knocked prone, or being moved against your will in any way. Additionally, you can dash as a bonus action while raging and spend adrenaline to end the petrified, stunned, or paralyzed condition on yourself. The demonic rage allows you to deal additional damage based on the amount of unspent adrenaline you have, and can turn any of that damage into either fire, necrotic, or radiant damage, depending on what kind of demon you are. Additionally, if you down a creature while raging, you can dash over to another creature in a bloodied frenzy and tear into them too. I've designed 6 of these rages so far and plan to add even more in the future. But let's talk a little about the technical branch of this skill tree, starting off with flourishes. When you spend a point in this node, you can choose to learn one of the flourishes from this big old list, and they're all focused on adding a bit of pizzazz to your attacks. Typically when you make an attack, but before you deal damage, you can choose to add a flourish to that attack by spending the required amount of stamina to do so. Most flourishes cost about 1 stamina, but others may require more. Some simple examples of flourishes would be like tripping a creature, disarming them, or doing a sick dodge roll to move a little and raise your AC by 2 until the start of your next turn. But they can also get a little more unique with the likes of Chug, which allows you to down a potion after making an attack and gain additional healing properties from it by not letting a single drop go to waste. Or Meteor Shot, which is tied to ranged attacks only. Here you spend 1 stamina before you make an attack to instead launch it into the air, and now you choose a 5-foot square within range. And if a creature enters that space before your next turn, the attack automatically hits. Moving on though from flourishes, we have Sneak Attack, which are exactly what you might think they are. Every point you spend in this node increases your Sneak Attack damage by 1d4, but you can only have a number of Sneak Attack dice equal to your level. Tricks are fun, and you learn 2 of them when you purchase from this node. A trick, occasionally referred to as a dance, is typically some sort of quick maneuver to gain the edge on the battlefield. You can complete 1 trick per turn, and a trick can be executed by either spending 1 stamina or taking your bonus action to do so, giving a greater use to bonus actions for anyone who just stands there not sure what to do with their bonus action every turn. They're simple and elegant and fill in for the rogues' cunning actions or abilities like the monk's slow fall. And all of those mentioned abilities are available to purchase along with many more, such as Spring, which doubles your jump distance, Lead, which lets you move a willing creature you can touch on your turn, or Quick Pick, which allows you to either attempt to pick a lock or someone's pockets. And then one of my favorite technical abilities in this skill tree is the ability to become a weapon master. You learn how to utilize a specific weapon to the best of its potential, now gaining new perks and abilities when wielding it. Additionally, every weapon master ability has a perfected technique that becomes accessible at 5th level. These are often a little more powerful and require a little more focus, and so stamina is often needed to execute their effects. Axe Terminator affects any weapon that can be described as an axe, and when you make an attack with an axe, you can use your bonus action to make a backswing as an offhand attack. But then come 5th level, you perfect your technique, and now when you make an attack against a creature, you can spend 2 stamina to have an adjacent creature of your choice to take damage equal to half the amount of damage you dealt. The Entangler ability gives you more use for nets, causing any grappled or restrained creature to now fall prone while being unable to cast spells that require material or somatic components. You're being very cheeky. And the perfected version allows you to catch any adjacent creatures to the target you throw your net at. Goliath Feller doubles the damage with slings against any creature larger than you, and you can spend 1 stamina with its perfected technique to knock those giants prone. Kung Fu is, for all of you Fallout lovers out there, it lets you ignore the effects of the reload property while removing disadvantages at close range. But you can also spend stamina to make an additional attack with this weapon, but it's at disadvantage. There are 20 of these weapon master abilities in total, and please go have a read of them and let me know in the comments which ones you would pick and why, and which of your D&D characters would be using them. Gosh, I haven't even gotten to touch on some of the coolest ones here, but I guarantee you there is something in that list for everyone, even wizards. But let's take some time to now move on to the mystical aspect of the skill tree. Now, I wanted this part of the skill tree to be more than just learning spells, but also using mana in unique ways or simply improving your own magical prowess. And so I've managed to compact the spell learning aspects of this skill tree into 3 simple nodes. Mana, which is used for casting spells and expressing your magical prowess. Cantrips, which are spells that can be cast without mana, and the learning of a spell. And so when you spend level points in this node, you can choose to learn any spell your heart desires. And once you learn a spell, you always have it prepared. None of that spell prep nonsense. But there is one simple restriction. To learn spells that are a higher level than first spells, your mana pool will need to be of a certain size. This reflects your magical potential. For example, to learn a second level spell, you need to have at least 10 mana in your mana pool. And to learn a 9th level spell, you'll need to have 50 mana in your mana pool. But Goblin, I hear you say, that means someone could know a 9th level spell by 6th level. And to that I say, no. There is a level restriction on certain spells, but theoretically a character could invest everything into mana for several levels and be able to cast a 5th level spell come level 3. But they would have about 5 hit points and be able to do much else other than cast that one new spell a few times, and that's it. And maybe there should be some restrictions on 3rd level spells or higher for balance purposes, but I don't know, I think that just wouldn't be as fun. But let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this. But like I said, the mystical side of the skill tree focuses more on just the learning of a spell. You can learn to create summons, and there are a bunch of them. They cost 1 mana to summon, and if they die, you can't summon that particular familiar again until you finish a long rest, which incentivizes you to buy more. Also, just next to it is the summons buff node. Purchasing from this node allows you to add buffs that you've learned to any of the summons you manifest. For example, you could summon a fox who can now fly for 1 extra mana, or give an imp an extra attack feature for 4 extra mana. You can really create some wild combinations with this, and what I love is that it's not too deep in this end of the skill tree so that anyone could easily take an animal companion up if they so desired. I mean, let's be real, like everybody loves an animal companion. There's no reason why one should be restricted to the likes of one specific class so that they can have an animal companion. Again, this is just another selling point for classless skill trees. Spell weaves are up next, which you can find right here, and are ways you can warp the weave of magic itself to alter the properties of spells you cast. Very similar to the sorcerer's meta magic. In fact, it's pretty much identical, but instead you spend mana to give spells additional properties or change them entirely. Alter Element, for example, allows you to change the damage type of the spell you're casting. Careful Crafts allows you to avoid your allies when you cast big area of effects, and Linger increases the spell's duration. Pretty much all of these spell weaves listed here are meta magic abilities, so if you have any suggestions for anything else that I should add, please include them in the comments below. The Ward node grants you an arcane shield that you can activate as a reaction to either protect you or an ally, very similar to the shield spell. And for any of you Gish-loving players, we have the Esper. Similar to Geralt or any other Witchers, Esper abilities are akin to the signs that they weave. Simple magical flourishes that can give a warrior the edge in combat. They can be flavored as psychic abilities, as they are technically considered non-magical effects in regards to counterspell and the likes. And because of this, you could also compare them to a Jedi's force powers. And the abilities listed in this node's descriptions are very similar in nature, allowing you to spend a little mana to push, pull, or slam a target. But now I need to talk about possibly my favorite node here, and that is the Arcane Bond. At some stage in their journey, a mage pursuing power will dedicate themselves to a specific aspect of the magical world and make it the core focus of their arcane power. But once they forge this bond to an aspect of the weave, they will be bound to it for life, closing themselves off to all other influences of the magical world. These arcane bonds have been inspired by the 5 mana types of Magic the Gathering, and also include an additional option inspired by colorless mana. Blue mages dedicate their mind to the pursuit of perfection. Knowledge is power and will allow them to mold the world to their perfect ideals. But they are careful in their pursuit and are ready to manipulate and deceive the world if it means guiding it to their vision. If you choose to be a green mage, you dedicate your life to all living things. This world is precious and needs to be nurtured, and the love you give to the world is returned to you tenfold. Traditions, the ties that bind, and the ways of nature must be preserved and defended. You know that true power does not come from one single source alone. If you wish to be a black mage, you dedicate your heart to the pursuit of power, no matter the cost. You become the master of siphoning life and the art of sacrifice. All great things gained come with an equal loss. When you choose the path of the red mage, you submit your soul to emotion, letting it be your guide. Freedom is the ultimate goal for red mages. Let cities crumble with time, let fires rage, because you know that true power cannot be contained, only danced with. Red mages listen to that impulse deep within and let their instincts guide them. We then have white mages, those who dedicate their conscience to doing what is right. They believe that rigorous structure and order is what is needed to grab power by the horns and guide it on the right path to be used for good. They follow a selfless path of law and light, believing that the better the world, the greater the forces of good will be. And finally, the Void Mage. Not very common, for the pursuit of this path means the resenting of all things arcane. You give yourself up to the void, throw it all away, all of your teachings, now understanding the pointless act of pursuing power. It does not exist and should not exist. Void mages rid the world of power. Only then will all things be equal. These anti-mages specialize in draining mana, diluting arcane effects, and cheaply casting spells like Counterspell, Dispel Magic, and so on. But alas, this is all I will be giving away. If you want to know more about these powers and abilities, scroll down to the description below, and there you will find this entire document, just short of 10,000 words, for absolutely. Now, these skill trees have a long way to go. Even when reaching nearly 10,000 words, I've yet to describe the abilities of any of the dual loads or the ultimate techniques found in the far corners of these skill trees. These will be incredibly powerful abilities available to anyone who dedicates themselves enough to one particular branch of this skill tree. But there you have it. We've made the first steps into this classless world of Dungeons and Dragons. But there's lots to be done. A crafting and a roleplay focused skill tree have yet to be designed. I have been sketching up concepts for each of them, but a lot, and I mean a lot, has yet to be written. But if this does excite you, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos where I'll be sharing brand new crafting skill tree systems and a massive collection of roleplay abilities held within these future skill trees. And please, 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 if you do playtest any of this with your friends, share your experiences in the comments below. Heck, even if you don't get to play anything from this skill tree and you still have thoughts or suggestions that you'd like to contribute, please, by all means, comment below what changes you'd make, what you'd add, what you love about this skill tree. And then I have to give a massive shout out to all of my patrons who support me and have been guiding me to a future where I can maybe one day pursue YouTube as a full-time career. You are really making that dream seem possible, and I adore creating this kind of content for you all, and it means the world to me that you love it enough to support me creating it for you. You are just incredible, and I don't know what to say. And there are so many of you now. What is this? This is nuts. This is crazy. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. But that's it from me though. If you like this content and want to see more skill tree stuff, check out some of these videos. Or if you like anime, and I've made a whole trilogy of Jujutsu Kaisen stuff. I've also made a JoJo video. So many videos. Go check them all out. Subscribe to see them all, and watch them, share them, have fun with the content that's in them. Sending you lots of love to everyone out there watching this. Thank you very, very much. Goodbye.